Precisely in 2010, President Goodluck Jonathan established the Federal Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development with a clear mandate to initiate modalities to ensure provision of adequate and affordable housing for the Nigerian citizenry both in rural and urban areas. The ministry is the umbrella policy arm of the federal government, charged with the duties of ensuring adequate and sustainable housing delivery to meet the needs and aspirations of the Nigerian citizen. The ministry is also carrying out easy access to home ownership and rental schemes. Under the Transformation Agenda and Vision 2020, the provision of accessible and affordable housing is one of the strategic national imperatives to guaranteeing the well-being and productivity of the citizenry. In January 2014, President Jonathan launched the Mortgage Refinance Program to address housing problems in Nigeria. The scheme will afford potential beneficiaries the opportunity to own their own homes through mortgage.
The launching ceremony of the federal government's first 10,000 mortgages for the affordable housing scheme today is a milestone for this nation. Today is indeed a remarkable day in the calendar of the administration of our President, His Excellency President Goodluck Jonathan, GCFR, in the quest for a repositioned and vibrant housing sector. It signals the progress that has been made since Mr. President officially launched the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company, the NMRC, in January 2014 as part of the transformation and strategic steps to scaling up mortgage penetration, access to affordable mass housing, and increased homes for Nigerians.
This came to reality when the federal government later in 2014 commenced the process of giving out 10,000 mortgage facilities to the Nigerian people with a loan repayment of between 15 years and 25 years respectively.
Since the ability of banks to deliver mortgage services is limited by the fact that 80% of all bank deposits are for 30 days only, which does not make for great strength or sustainability in providing housing resources for the housing sector. The NMRC is here to ensure greater access for financing of tenants from 15 to 20 years. So instead of people just being able to buy housing and have to pay up in 12 months, in 36 months, in 24 months, in fact, when people get a mortgage that they can pay in 36 months, regarded as very lucky. We are changing that whole thing now. Now for 10 years, for 15 years, for 20, to take a loan to enter into a business. Once you have title to your property. So we'll be really looking to the states. We have gone over with them certain criteria they had to fulfill in order to be part of this scheme so that they can provide this for land titling and all that in a very fast way.
Various states across the country are beneficiaries, while some states have already presented their certificates of occupancy to the federal government to enable their citizens to access the finance.
It is important to note that pre-qualification for the mortgagee is a crucial first step to home ownership to enable you benefit from these affordable houses when they hit the market. In other supportive ways, my ministry is pursuing complementary activities targeted at bridging the current housing gap and the success of the Nigerian Housing Finance Program, for which we have recorded modest achievements in vital areas. In the recent past, our President has commissioned several estates, both in partnership with the private sector and funded by the Federal Mortgage Bank and the FHA, that's Federal Housing Authority. They include the Aviation Village, the Elim Estate in Enugu that was commissioned just a few weeks ago. Others that are waiting commissioning to also tie into this project are the estate in Lugbe, in Kubwa, and also in Suleja. All these are measures that have been put in place to ensure that the vision of the present administration as it affects the housing sector is achieved. The ministry is also working closely with the private sector, the Real Estate Development Association of Nigeria, REDA, professional and regulatory bodies in the housing and urban development sector, and other key stakeholders to further increase the national housing stock and effectively address some of the factors militating against housing development in Nigeria.
It is very clear that the present administration has given the provision of affordable and adequate housing a priority, which has led to the various concession agreements signed between the federal government and private developers across the country in the last 3 years.
You are welcome to this event, which is the signing of the agreement for the concession of the reclamation and infrastructural development of Festa Phase 2 in Lagos. It is truly a momentous occasion and another great milestone in the transformation agenda of the administration of its President Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, GCFR, especially with respect to infrastructural development in the country. In the 1970s, the federal government made a massive acquisition known as Festa Town, Lagos. Part of this acquisition was built to accommodate participants at the Second World Black and African Festival of Arts and Culture, Festa 77, successfully hosted by Nigeria in 1977 and referred to as Festa Phase 1. After the festival, the completed estate, together with the whole land acquisition, was placed under the management of Federal Housing Authority, FHA. Efforts to reclaim and develop the outstanding 1,126 hectares of land known as Festa Phase 2 started in the early 1980s and remained unsuccessful because of the huge cost of the project. Today, we are witnessing a major step in the long overdue process towards the development of Festa Phase 2 in Lagos.
Successive efforts to meet the consistent increasing demand for housing by citizens have failed in the past, partly because of the adoption of the public sector-driven approach. And the new approach for housing delivery is for government to design and implement policies and partnership with the private sector under the Public-Private Partnership (PPP) and other relevant stakeholders. However, for social housing, government must be directly involved through the provision of funding, subsidies and other incentives.
In 2006, the FHA took advantage of public-private partnership of its new platform and advertised calling for expression of interest for the reclamation and infrastructural development of Festa Phase 2 to produce 7,000 service plots, complete with standard infrastructure and all essential services. Many companies responded to the advertisement, 2 of which eventually submitted technical financial bids after passing the pre-qualification exercise. Following analysis of bids, Messrs. New Festac Development Company Limited emerged as the preferred concessionaire and developer. Messrs. New Festac Company Limited is a special purpose vehicle, that's a SPV made of 4 companies. All with track record of performance in Nigeria and diverse experience in construction and infrastructural development.
Nigeria, with a population of over 167 million people, requires an addition of 1 million housing units per annum to reduce the national deficit of about 17 million housing units and avert housing crisis by year 2020.
The efforts of the Federal Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, whereby the special grace of God and the head, to continue to work collaboratively with regards to the provision of affordable homes to the good people of Nigeria and then today Enugu State. We are proud to be associated with the delivery of this estate. Our estate of FMB/ELIM contribution, which was financed 100% by FMBN through the National Housing Fund scheme. It is of mixed development, primarily targeted to address the needs of the low-income and middle-income segments of our population. This is in line with the current policy direction of government to provide enabling legal and regulatory framework to provide the affordable housing, particularly for the low income and middle income groups within the country.
On this auspicious occasion of the commissioning of the 324 unit Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria and LM Residential Housing Estate. Today's commissioning ceremony is another visible and verifiable pointer to the success of the housing delivery and urban development strategies of our administration. I am pleased to note that the past 4 years have witnessed our sustained, painstaking and mounting actions. We are beginning to notice significant improvement in the housing and urban development sector, arising from the implementation of many people's-oriented innovation and policies. The Nigerian Mortgage Refinancing Company, PLC, a major revolutionary public-private enterprise which was launched by this administration last year, will bridge the funding cost of residential mortgages, stimulating the affordability and availability of good quality housing to Nigerians. All these programs have been consciously developed and consistently pursued, aimed at promoting accessibility to home ownership, reducing the affordability gap in home finance, and ensuring sustainable urbanization for the benefit of our good people. We shall not relent in our efforts until we provide affordable and adequate shelter to our citizens. In view of its importance to rapid socio-economic development, we are ever mindful of the need to accord priority attention to the housing and urban development sector.
Moreover, available studies show that most urban dwellers in Nigeria today live in shanty towns, dilapidated houses and unsanitary conditions without basic amenities. The scenario is worse in the rural areas where the problems are not just the poor quality of housing, but also that of inadequate infrastructural facilities like roads, drainage, water, power supply, and other social amenities. Today, the forward and backward linkages associated with the housing sector is becoming history with the various housing reforms undertaken by the federal government in recent times. Adequate measures are being put in place to consolidate on the new technology to provide standards and specifications that will prevent building collapse in Nigeria.
The adoption of the alternative building technologies is also being encouraged by the ministry. Most of the developers that we have coming in, other than the conventional method of construction, have come in with new technologies which will be faster to put up a structure and also cheaper. We're encouraging them to come in with such a technology.
The National Building Code, which was published in 2006, is being reviewed and updated by the ministry in collaboration with the National Building Code Advisory Committee. On approval by the Federal Executive Council, the ministry will champion the process of ensuring compliance with its provisions through proper enforcement by the three tiers of government, professional and regulatory bodies, and other relevant stakeholders. The House of Representatives has commenced the process of enacting a law to enforce the provisions of the National Building Code. The Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, and all the states of the Federation, in consonance with sections 1, 2, and 3 of the Code, are expected to domesticate the proposed act of the National Assembly to ensure effective implementation of the Code nationwide.
The roadmap that is coming out will specify what each stakeholder has to do, and we will ensure for a private developer, for a government developer, whatever you call yourself, even an individual structure that is coming up, we will ensure that the standard is upheld. And also the quality of materials used also affects the standard. We're also looking into that. We're talking with manufacturers, distributors. No fake material will be brought in and will be used in any of our estates or any private development.
With growing confidence in the Nigerian economy and the commitment of the present administration to zero tolerance for corruption and the entrenchment of the principles of transparency, accountability, and good governance as the propelling force for a national rebirth, Nigeria can confidently be said to be on the right path to steady progress from now into the immediate future. The funding of sustainable housing delivery promotes investments in the production of building materials and boosts linkage businesses, all of which generate employment of engineers, draftsmen, bricklayers, tilers, carpenters, block molders, plumbers, electricians, iron benders, painters, cement and sand suppliers, wood and roofing sheet suppliers, food vendors, security men, drivers and landscapers.
We have furthermore repeatedly underscored the need for the development of professionals, artisans and craftsmen in the housing sector in order to have more good quality and functional buildings. Yes, that has been a great need in the country. We have our youth roaming the streets, looking for what to do, looking for employment. And yet, when it gets to building, we go outside the neighboring states to bring in artisans. The ministry is looking deeply into this, training our young ones to be involved in the building sector.
Empirical evidence has shown that the construction of one-bedroom bungalow requires the services of 50 persons, and for a two-bedroom bungalow, 76 different people are required. This means that for 1,000 housing units of two-bedroom bungalow, 76,000 workers will be engaged. Accordingly, if 1,000 housing units of two-bedroom bungalow are built annually in each of the 36 states of the Federation and FCT, a total of 2,812,000 jobs will be created on an annual basis.
Housing is vital also to the socio-economic development of any society. It not only adds considerable aesthetic value to our living space, but also constitutes an important element of wealth and job creation. Hence, its provision is a veritable policy instrument for promoting a just, egalitarian, and equitable society.
The commissioning of various housing estates in recent times by the federal government, especially in Enugu State, where the workers are said to be making regular monthly contribution to the National Housing Fund, makes it a lot more easier for citizens to access 100% mortgage in owning a home of their own, as financed by the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria.
Availability first was the major issue. But today, with the vision that the federal government is pursuing, the housing sector, availability will now be a thing of the past, because all hands are being put on deck from the government side, from the private sector, like we've witnessed today, that houses are springing up everywhere across the nation. So the case of availability in the nearest future will be a thing of the past. And then for affordability, because you can have houses standing when the rates are too high, you won't have people to take it over. We're also looking into that. We put a benchmark for the mass housing that it will not exceed a certain rate, a certain amount. That's the case of affordability. We are targeting the low income. We are targeting the middle income. If you need the high income, like what we have today, 100 million, less than that, you come this way. You need the mass housing that the government is backing you up. Why we will have the affordability is the support that comes from the government. The issue of land is given by the government. We don't charge that. That takes a part of the cost of construction of the off-takers. And also, in some cases, government also put in the infrastructure, which would have been counted into the cost of the construction. So with that, it reduces the cost.
We're also grateful to the Honorable Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, Mrs. Akon Eyakeni, for your presence here today and for the landmark successes you've recorded in the housing sector. I want to also inform you that I've directed the relevant officers of government to expedite action on the request from your ministry for land in Enugu for the purpose of developing a similar housing estate.
It is because of the problem with the housing situation that God mandated us to do the housing. So I agree that it's a problem of housing. I believe that everybody needs to join hands together and provide more housing. There's a dearth of housing in the country, and we must be able to do that which is necessary. And that is why we are part of it.
Nigerian cities are also centers of economic growth and centers for commerce and wealth creation, and for the promotion of healthy living. The Federal Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development is determined to continue playing a leading role through the provision of policy direction, technical and administrative support for all stakeholders in the housing and urban development sector. The ministry strongly works towards becoming an effective national development tool, believing that with all the set mechanisms already put in place and all hands on deck, it shall meet the set target of Mr. President and the expectations of the citizenry for the transformation of Nigeria's housing and urban development sector.